we are talking about speed, and specifically the importance of speed in marketing, how the lack of speed often kills our marketing performance over time. So what can we do? How can we break down barriers and make sure that in 2023, we talked about budgets the other week and what to budget for. Now, how can we apply those budgets and really amp it up to make sure we're executing and driving results and testing the right things and testing quickly? So our guest today to talk us through that is someone very special to the WebMechanix fam. One of our longest tenured employees, longer than I here at WebMechanix. He currently heads up our media strategy here at WebMechanix and oversees all our media channels and all of our partners. He is a brilliant marketer, both in platform and strategically. He is a wonderful presenter and an amazing thinker, and he's taught me a lot, especially in the last month as he's been sort of ramping up his media minute, which you guys need to check out, and we'll promote here in a sec. The one and only Josh Muskin is joining us today. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Jared. An intro like that, I hope I don't mess this up. But we're going to have some fun today, everybody. There are going to be some things you're going to be able to take away and implement at 1 o'clock if you were to be inclined to move so quickly. But we're going to Jared's point, talk about how to do things more quickly than you're doing them now. And now some of the roadblocks that you believe or have heard exist that are keeping you from moving at the speed at which we're going to talk about might not actually be real. So a little bit about me first. Who am I? Why should you care? I probably don't even need the slide thanks to Jared, but I'm the Executive Director of Media Strategy here at WebMechanix. I've been here since 2011. And I'm here today in particular because I like moving fast, running fast, marketing fast, all the things. But we're talking about how to move quickly today. And here are the contents of your goodie bag. By the end of this presentation, you're going to be able to know how you can test more things faster, how to make sure you're testing the right things, how to make sure those things worked. And we'll give you kind of a bonus here, the 5 things that you should be testing right now, something that we're implementing with most, if not all of our clients over last quarter and this quarter, trying to set ourselves up nicely for Q1 of 23. So the crux of it all, testing more stuff faster than you're used to testing things already.
As we're going through this, sorry, just real quick, leave in the chats, what's one thing that you're testing in 2023 or testing right now?
Yeah, please. And Jared, I can't see the chat. So if you need to stop me, ask for a question, just hit me up.
You got it.
So when we're talking about testing stuff faster, the very first thing that you need to do is you need to get a notepad or a note stock or Evernote or whatever, and write down all the reasons why you feel personally, you and your department can or can't test new things. And there are 3 really common answers to this: time, budget, and expertise. You will likely find some others, but we're going to show you an exercise that works with those too. The key thing to point out here is 85% of all the reasons you don't test new stuff is made up, just like that 85% number. And when we write down some of the things that are keeping us from testing, we then get an opportunity to look at them individually and figure out, are they actually roadblocks or not? So if we look at time, budget, and expertise, here is an example of how you might combat each of these, and we'll do an even more detailed example here after this. But for time, you might say, I don't have enough time to do any of this. And in which case, you really have 2 options. You can either make time by not doing something else, or you can find a faster way to do the thing that you think is going to take you forever. The same options exist from a budget perspective. You can either make budget by not doing something else, or you can find a way to do it more inexpensively or for free, even better. And I don't know how. We all have access to youtube.com. There's an explainer video for quite literally everything from cutting an onion to building an airplane. So there's a chance that we can find out how to do the thing if we can find a video that resonates with the way that we personally choose to learn.
Yeah, a couple things. Sorry, Josh, just to interject, I'd add to the slide. One thing is to delegate. So, if you don't have time, you can cut things and you can find faster ways to do things, or maybe you can delegate that task to someone, right? Maybe there's someone already on your team, if that would be more than willing and has bandwidth to take on that task, or you can delegate it relatively cheaply. So if you don't have budget, maybe there's someone who's a specialist who can do it for relatively cheap or sort of at a project cost, or you can find a VA. We talked in another session of the Growth Clinic about hiring offshore virtual assistants. You can hire them for relatively cheap, $8 to $10 an hour, and they can do a lot. They can do a lot of stuff that you probably shouldn't be doing, especially if you're trying to drive a marketing program. So I would recommend doing an audit. Take a look at the things that you're doing right now and see, like, is this a $10 an hour task, a $100 an hour task, or $1,000 an hour task? $10 an hour tasks, ask, are they necessary? If no, just eliminate them. If yes, if they still need to happen, then see if you can find a way to delegate them, or find someone else that can do it for relatively cheaper than your hourly rate.
Yeah, and I'm very aware that this slide is not rocket science, right? It's easy to say, well, you can get more time by just doing less other things. But let's take a look at how this could actually work in an example for marketing purposes. Yep. So if we use the example of a UGC ad or a user-generated content ad, and you've seen these, this is any influencer with a phone pointing it at themselves, talking about a product or a service. These are big now. Thanks to TikTok, thanks to Instagram Reels, thanks to YouTube Shorts, this format is getting a lot of popularity across these platforms. We're seeing a lot of really good engagement when running them as paid advertisements. So a lot of our clients and colleagues are choosing to test them for their industries. And you could make this a really big thing. You could say, well, I don't have a DSLR camera. I can't hire an actor. I can't film this in a studio. But if we take our time, budget, and expertise example from before and apply it to this, this is kind of how this thing can work. So if you don't think that you have time to make a UGC ad, you could grab this here. You could point it at yourself and you could film something in 30 seconds to a minute. Probably have 30 seconds to a minute. And if you do that, you didn't actually need any budget to accomplish it. Totally free. Cost you 60 seconds. And if you don't know how, there are some really good resources, at least to be inspired as far as what you could do. So TikTok themselves readily publish a library where you can sort the best performing ads by conversion, by reach, or by click-through rate, and you can even filter them down to industry. There are also websites like Ad Collection where they will they're a company that produces these types of ads, but they'll publish every ad that they make. So again, you can just kind of scroll through and be inspired by what it is that someone else made, make a version of it that's specific to you, your industry, and your service, and try it. And this whole continuum here takes no more than 5 to 10 minutes if you're really kind of being meticulous about it. But it takes this thing that could be blown up into a big budget. We need to hire a talent acquisition person to organize all of these things. And it makes it just, how can I test this? We're not rolling a full program out yet. We're just saying, hey, let me make a video or two and see if this is worth my time in the first place. And this method works for sort of everything: podcasting, blog writing, video production, ad format testing, landing page copywriting. You sort of name it, and you can put it through the same series of questions. Do I actually need as much time as I think to do this? Can I record one take and have that be good enough? Do I have to pay someone? Can I do it myself? Can I delegate it to generate someone? And if you've never seen it or know how to do it, but you've consumed the content, right there, you have some examples. And when in doubt, really, you can just case it. Well, it's short for copy and steal everything, kind of. I mean, you can't plagiarize someone else's content, but if you see an ad for a competitor or a very similar product, and it really makes a lot of sense to you, just take their format, their timing, their intro language, repurpose it all for your product. There you go. The whole creative cycle of what do I do? How do I make it? What script do I write? You eliminate all of that, and you test what is at least something that someone else is putting some dollars behind as a format for yourself, and see if the format is then worth investing further iterations into.
Yep. And just a couple comments I'll touch on before we move on. Jim says we were very dubious about Fiverr, but the right tasks are easily accomplished for cheap. Absolutely, yeah. And the great thing about Fiverr is it's a marketplace, right? So you can kind of test the waters with the vendor and see if it, see if they do good work or not. Obviously, those vendors are reviewed as well, so that kind of shortens the learning curve a little bit. And yeah, you can also, to Josh's point, if something is getting a lot of use, if a vendor is getting a lot of use and getting a lot of reviews, it's probably something that people are seeing success outsourcing, right? So that marketplaces can be good places to come up with ideas for, like, okay, what are people outsourcing that I'm doing right now that I probably don't have to or could do better for cheaper, right, with an outsourced vendor. Kayla also mentions she's testing a chatbot. So that's awesome, Kayla. And I think in a little bit we can talk about some of the different tactics to test and touch on maybe chatbots as well at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So there's one of the biggest pieces of analysis paralysis when it comes to testing new stuff is like, what's the stuff? What do you test? There's a blog post every day about how XYZ thing is the future of all internet marketing. So do you choose that or the other things that are on your list? Well, we can work through a framework for this too. When you're trying to figure out what to test, these are some categories to consider and the order in which to consider them. So we like to talk with our clients about testing new features, then new channels, then new mediums. And we do that because it starts closest to the things that we already have data that are working, and it moves further into the unknown as we go from 1 to 3. So when we talk about features, channels, and mediums, it's helpful to make a list within each of those as well to get further into specificity. So when we're talking about new features, we should always be starting with things we already know work, platforms we already know work. If Facebook is 80% of your media spend because it produces quality results, great. What on Facebook have you not yet taken advantage of? Maybe it's UGC ads like we just talked about. Maybe there are some new settings like using Advantage Plus or some new ad formats or placements or methodologies that you've seen out there that could be tested. So you take something you already know works, you've got a lot of confidence in it, and just saying, hey, I'll just make one other campaign like this. We've never kind of run it like that before, and let's see what happens. But there's a higher level of success because you already trust the medium, you trust the audience and the targeting that you have, and low level of risk and effort really because you probably already have someone operating within that platform and you're just asking them to make one more campaign instead of learn some entirely new workflow. So you can make your list of new features that you want to test within an individual platform, Google Ads, Facebook, what have you. Then where I would look after you've exhausted that list is new channels, particularly channels where you can take assets and content that you already have and repurpose them to also work on those channels. So if you are using Reels for Instagram as an asset, you could easily then test TikTok. Your creative is already done for you. It's just a matter of doing new targeting, new budgets, et cetera, on a new platform. Things like Reddit, native, YouTube, CTV, the channel list sort of goes on and on. But if you think that your audience has a relevant presence on those channels and you have content that you can take from existing channels that have proven themselves worthy and move it over for speed, you can then go and say, okay, what's my best targeting option? Use winning creative, see if that works over some period of time. And then the furthest thing away from the known into the unknown are entirely new mediums. If you've never done a podcast before, you can try it. You've never done videos before, you can try it. Augmented and virtual reality are starting to kind of kick up here too. And direct mail's coming back, which is weird, but also true. So there are some things that you can do all the way on that end of the spectrum as well. These would make maybe the biggest splash if they're super successful because they are so different from what you are actively doing on, say, the features and even channel side. But they are certainly kind of in this category where they might do something, they might do nothing. They take probably more time than the other two and are less proven. But in each case, you can make these 3 columns. You can say, what are all the new features I want to test? What are all the new channels I want to test? And if I have some time left over and some capabilities, what mediums might I invest time in also? And then you get to prioritize these. You get to say, okay, I've got my list. Now I'm going to order them. And you're going to order them starting from what can I do right now with what I already have, with my team, with my equipment, with my software. What can I do right now with what I already have? I don't have to purchase anything. I don't have to sign up for anything. I can do it today. Then you move into what can I do later with what I have now? And this sort of tends to be a preference. It's like, what can I do right now? Because I'm already thinking about it. I've got the ideas I can execute very quickly. What also can I do that I don't have a roadblock for? I've got the equipment, the software, the time, what have you, but it is going to come in second place to number 1. And then lastly, what do I need more things to do? You probably can't have a podcast unless you have a way to record it. So there might be a roadblock to that or something of that effect, but it's really a prioritization of speed. What can you do with no issue? What can you do with just a little bit of thought, but also with no issue? And then what do you actually need things that are legitimate, either equipment or software or talent roadblocks keeping you from? And you can prioritize this list in that order. And the ultimate goal is you create a list that you can act on immediately upon finishing that list. You finish your list, you put it in Evernote, and you can immediately switch screens and start on thing number 1. That's your goal with this level of prioritization, thinking about what can I act on today.
Yeah. The one thing I'd say about not just prioritizing, but about how to test is try to find the minimum viable test. So for podcasts, for example, instead of going out and creating your own podcast, which requires a lot of work, a lot of setup, a lot of maintenance, go be a guest on a podcast. Find a podcast that You can go on, see if you enjoy it, even if you enjoy speaking on podcasts. Because if you enjoy it and you're good, you find you have a knack for it after a few guest episodes, then maybe you would enjoy hosting a podcast. If not, then maybe find another host, or maybe it's not the medium for you, right? Same with video. If you're already creating some sort of long form video, chop it up, use a tool like Descript, create little short form clips and distribute it, right? But try to find that minimum viable test where you can still see an impact, but it doesn't require such a heavy lift to get going.
For sure.
Yep.
And then the last thing you're going to want to do when you're testing something is have a way to figure out if that test was worthwhile or not, or if it's worth expanding on or not. Did it work? So this is going to take you back to a third grade science class where they teach you the scientific method, but effectively we need to develop for ourselves a hypothesis about the thing that we're testing, and then we need to record the outcome of that test. So when you're thinking about your hypothesis, common questions that come to mind are things like, who did you expect to target? What response did you expect to hear? What did you think would happen in terms of lead volume or engagement? And how did the test compare to similar existing metrics from other channels or other platforms or other tests from the past? And on your outcome, you're looking for something very metrics and numerical. You're looking for changes or quantification of lead volume, conversion rates, some way to target market response, lead to close rate if you're enabling sales, ENPS for a community, target audience coverage. Did you hit the right people or not? Something that's very, very binary that happens on the outcome where you can say, I got 10 of these or 0, or it did happen or it didn't. Something that really makes it clear and concise as the answer to that hypothesis question that you posed in the first place. The exact process for testing and measuring it, really simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple. Write down what you think is going to happen, both in principle or qualitatively with your hypothesis, and in volume or some measurable quantitative metric. Find a way to measure that thing and then report on. The last part, honestly, is the part that falls through the most. People know what they think is going to happen. They know where to find the data, and then they just don't. So a little bit of discipline goes a long way here, especially if you are creating something as simple as a spreadsheet that says, tested this, expected that, waiting 2 weeks to find out, did it work or not? Testing is great and testing quickly is great, but it's there to give you an indication of this test was useful. There is a positive light at the tunnel. I am 6 feet from gold, and I should now invest time and effort into this thing. And you'll never get to the time and effort investing part unless you have determined if your test was worthwhile or not. So I'm going to pause here. Jared, is there anything in chat or any questions before we go on? And then after we answer those, or if not, we'll talk about 5 things that you can start testing right after this presentation ends.
Any questions about how to test? Going once, going twice, going thrice? No, I think we're good to keep rolling.
Well, so 5 of the most popular things that we're doing with our clients right now, and even for WebMechanix ourselves, in no real particular order, but all are pretty valuable to us at the moment. First one, I already mentioned this as my go-to example. It's the UGC style ads. It's a thing that Facebook and Instagram have gone out of their way to say. They have brought it up at their performance marketing summits. They have said in documentation that they are actually removing static placements and replacing them with advertisers who have chosen to use this 9x16 style ad that ooze authenticity. They're really, they vary heavily in terms of the subject, the style, the intonation of the language being used. They follow trends. They're just visually different. They're not necessarily held to that super strict brand standard, but they're just something real that no pun intended, something real that someone could engage with. So this UGC style ad is generally low budget. You don't need a big fancy camera. They actually recommend to use an iPhone or an Android or just some sort of lo-fi video to get started. And you can put them out there and test like you would any other ad. They also then tell you about branded content. So as the latch on to UGC ads, they talk about branded content, which is using that user-generated content style ad, but having it displayed through somebody's profile. So you see this a lot with influencer marketing. Companies like Athletic Greens, this is like their entire marketing strategy is to do this if you follow them on Facebook. But it is the same content, but instead of coming from brand, it comes from creator handle, and down at the bottom, it'll say things like in paid partnership with brand name. Meta has gone out of the way to say that simply using this branded content format with the exact same content that you would use here generates about 20% more leads at a lower cost per lead than only using this kind. So you've already done this. Work this into your creator agreements and or use your personal Instagram if you're trying to move quickly, but something easy enough to test as well. For all of you B2B folks, this is new as of like a couple weeks ago, actually. So LinkedIn just launched something called document ads. And we all know the play, right? You make a really cool ebook, you put a landing page up, you put a form on it, you tell people about the ebook, and 2% of them go to your landing page and download the ebook, and the other 98% didn't care enough to do that. And so you reach 2% of your target audience, which is me. So document ads on LinkedIn make it kind of cool. You can upload a PDF and you can choose how many pages of that PDF are directly visible. People on mobile can swipe through them. They can see as much content as you allow them to see. You'll get a CTA like unlock the rest of this PDF for this content or document. And the user can click that, show a lead ad, or a lead form rather, and download it right there without having to go to a landing page. So it lets you get more eyeballs on that content you work so hard on. It still gives you an opportunity to collect some information for the full value of that asset, but it's just another way to distribute something without having to kick somebody off the platform, send them to a landing page, hope the landing page was awesome, then convert them, then hope they open the file and read it. You can kind of give some of that really valuable content away on the front while still getting an opportunity to collect some data on the back. And last two are slightly more general, but try one new platform. There are some things that are transferable. If you're doing Instagram Reels, Shorts and TikTok are right there in front of you. You can just recreate or reuse that content you already have and upload it there. And there are also some other things that used to be really, really difficult to get into that are now easier. So TV Scientific, connected TV partner, they have minimums. They'll do site to TV retargeting, otherwise lowering the barrier of getting on things like Paramount Plus or other streaming services. So see if you have content that you can repurpose to one new platform, and also make it your goal to test one new medium next year. To Jared's point, if you want to try podcasts, try just joining a bunch of podcasts first before you make your own. Video sales letters are interesting. You make a really, really, really good 20 to 40 minute video, and that'll work better than any short form landing page you've ever had. And I kind of joked, but didn't really about direct mail earlier. There is the old school direct mail where you just fill out addresses and send them all a pamphlet. But there's also services now that when somebody fills out a form with an address on it, they will automatically send them a one-off piece of direct mail. So you don't have to have a big inventory of pamphlets or postcards or what have you, but you can still give them that nice physical touch of thing. And obviously this section is endless. You could pick any new medium that's out there, but really we, true to our previous slides, we went from features within ad platforms that you were all probably using already, a new ad concept, a new type of way to distribute that ad here as well. And then we move forward into new channels, new mediums.
Very cool. Thank you, Josh. Great performance, great presentation. I think you've made a very clear format or framework for how we can test going forward. I'm curious to hear from the chat. What are you guys looking to test right now, or are the things you're thinking of testing, but trying to figure out how to go about testing them? Let us know if you have any of those you're looking at in the chat. We can kind of brainstorm on those a little bit. Nobody's testing anything this year. Oh, we're testing landing pages with unbounced, Jim says. Yes. Yeah, that's good. So unbounced does have an built-in A/B testing feature. Also using Google Optimize. Yep, that makes a ton of sense. Optimize is great because it comes with the Google Suite, so it's free. There are paid tools like Optimizely out there, but Optimize, you can just set it up and hop right in. And get testing. Unbounced does also have a built-in A/B testing feature, and HubSpot for email content in our marketing automation. Yeah, that is interesting. Jim, are you testing workflows, or what particular feature of HubSpot? Workflows? Yep, very cool. There's some very neat What's cool about HubSpot workflows is you can integrate them with a lot of what you're doing. For example, if you're running those document ads Josh was talking about earlier, you can integrate your if you have your LinkedIn integrated with HubSpot, you can basically pipe those in as a form submission and trigger a workflow based on those, right? So there's a lot of integrating you can do with other systems, which is one of the fun things about HubSpot is you can kind of sync all your data or channels in there and make it a central source of truth for post-conversion.
Something that we've been experimenting with from a content perspective, because you mentioned email content, Jim, is writing style. So there was a study done recently that the most effective, how to describe this, most effective writing style as far as like age of understanding or age of teaching is actually between the 3rd and 5th grade reading levels, the most effective writing style for B2B marketing, which sounds weird and crazy, but true, supposedly. And one of the ways that they suggest to force yourself to write in that style is to use no commas and no words over 2 syllables. So no 3, 4, 5, 6 syllable words. If you have a 6-syllable word, don't use that either. But what it does is it really forces you to write short, very concise, and very simple sentences. And it'll take something like discover the synergies that our product can provide your performance marketing. You get where the rest of that is going to, or our software makes you more money, or something much simpler. And you can put them next to each other. You can test the robust sort of jargon language, and you can test the really short, choppy. And it's not how you talk. It's not necessarily how you choose to read in your head either, but it really forces the writer to be overly simplistic and make every single word count. Because even words like performance, you can't use if you're following those words. So how would you say that in a clearer, more concise way?
Yeah, that's huge, Josh. Like, it goes back to the principle of like, don't make me think, right? Like if I'm a user, don't make it hard for me to understand what you're trying to convey to me or what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I was just on Dave Gerhardt's Facebook group, and a head of marketing posted about their website and said they invested in this really beautiful website, but it's not converting. And she asked for consultants, but she actually got a lot of great advice in the thread, because if you go to the website, yes, it is a very beautiful website, but it's very focused on kind of their philosophy and their narrative, but it doesn't really tell me like, what is the benefit if I get your product right now, right? It like dances around that, right? So being very direct and to the point and being simple in what you're conveying, and being, not making the user have to figure out like what's going on this website. Why am I here? What's the objective that I as a user have to accomplish? Makes things so much easier. Yes, keep it simple, stupid. That's right. 100%. I want to plug, everybody go to that link that I just dropped and subscribe. So Josh has a newsletter, Media Muse, that pretty much weekly you post. Is that right, Josh? Is that? Yep. Every week, Josh is dropping hot takes and strong opinions for today's media landscape. He's bringing the latest and greatest in that newsletter. I learn a ton every time I read it, so highly recommend you guys go subscribe, check that out. Thank you, Jim. Josh puts out awesome stuff there. Just follow Josh in general. He's got posts awesome stuff every week on LinkedIn. He'll drop media minutes every now and then, which are super quippy, short form videos that I always look forward to in my feed. So please, first off, Josh, thank you so much. Guys, please follow him, check out his content. Highly worth the subscribe, worth the follow.